From the Rest Center for Media in downtown Cape Girardeau, welcome to Focus on Southeast, a program on issues, events, and people impacting the campus of Southeast Missouri State University. I'm Dan Woods with KRCU Public Radio. Later on today's show, we'll hear the story of how a lunch meeting of two local poets turned into a book of dialogue poems called Friend to Friend. We'll be talking with Dr. Brooke Hildebrand Clubbs and Dr. Robert Hamlin during the second half of today's show. But first, we're joined by Dr. Eric Bain-Selbo. He is the Dean of the College of Humanities and Social Sciences here at Southeast Missouri State University. Dr. Bain-Selbo, Eric, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So this is your first time on our show,
Yep.
so tell us about your background and how you came to be here at Southeast.
Well, I've moved around a little bit to the eastern part of the United States, and so I finished my schooling at the University of Chicago, my PhD there. I was 10 years at Lebanon Valley College in Pennsylvania, a small regional liberal arts school, 7 years as a department chair there. Then I was 10 years at Western Kentucky University, so close by.
Yeah.
And after 10 years as department head in philosophy and religion at Western Kentucky University, I had an interest in administrative work. And so I took a dean position in the School of Humanities and Social Sciences at IU Kokomo. So that's a regional campus of the Indiana University system.
Okay.
And after 5 years there, I stumbled across an interesting ad from Southeast Missouri State University. And I had heard of SEMO before. I was interested in the scale of the university, the size of the university. And once I came here, I was really interested in the fact that the College of Humanities and Social Sciences at SEMO is a relatively new college. There was some reorganization about 5 years ago. The college has been this is its 5th year, but I'm the first full-time dean. We had two wonderful colleagues who served in the interim role, and a search a couple years ago got derailed by the pandemic. And so it really is a college that is ready to move forward and in this new identity. So I was interested in that.
Well, let's expand on that, because that was one of my questions to you is, what do you see as far as pushing the college more visible, more out there in the community? What do you see when you look at the things now?
That's a great question. I mean, our college is already very involved in terms of community engagement. For example, on Friday, we hosted again National History Day for District 9 for our state. So that would be one example of the sort of engagement that we're already involved in that. Our social work program, for example, we have an accredited bachelor's degree in social work. Those students are serving the broader community on a regular basis.
My daughter's one of them.
Oh,
actually.
there you go.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
And so we're already very involved in that way. I think part of where we might go as a college and maybe as a campus, as we think about regional comprehensive institutions, their mission really is to serve their region. And we typically have thought about that in terms of serving 18 to 22-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
But the demographic situation is changing, and frankly, the workforce demands are changing. So increasingly, we need to look at opportunities where we can provide lifelong learning for people, right? So that campus has become not this place where you go to as an 18 to 22-year-old, but a place where you continually come back for new information, new training, new skills, new capabilities, right? So one of the things we're looking at, for example, are sometimes called micro-credentials or certificates, or small packaging of educational opportunities that may be in things like professional writing, right? Or professional communication. So these sort of things that people see as advantageous to advancing their career, right? But that also serve our current students. So that kind of lifelong learning is one piece that we're really going to be looking at in the coming year.
Is that a change? You've kind of piqued my interest on this. Is that a change on the way higher ed has typically been done, like talking about these micro-credentials? Is that something new, or is it something that higher ed's moving to now with the workforce?
It's fairly new. I would say in the last maybe 5 to 10 years, more folks have been looking at this. And really, you're building on courses and faculty that you already have. So you're not adding new courses, you're not having to go hire new faculty. You're just figuring out ways in which you can make your educational opportunities available to a wider audience. And again, I think the key is to start thinking about our college campuses differently. Even though, as I mentioned, we have been involved in the community for years, we need to think more in terms of how can we be a place where people continually come back for educational opportunities. And certainly with the advances in technology, online teaching, high flex teaching, we're able to actually deliver educational opportunities to people who otherwise, they can't come to a 2 o'clock class on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. One of the things about your bio that I was interested in, I noticed you were in a documentary in 2019 on ESPN, so College Football 150, Football is US, the college game, and you brought some books. Tell us about what this topic is and what research you've done, what you've written.
Well, I sort of fell into this. So I was at a conference one time, the American Academy of Religion Conference, so largest meeting of religion scholars in the world. And I'm at a reception, and I'm talking to a colleague of mine who was actually living in Kentucky at the time and was talking about writing an article or a book maybe about basketball as religion in Kentucky.
Okay.
And which makes sense if you know Kentucky.
Yeah.
And but I'm from Tennessee, so I'm from the South, and I know football is sort of king in the South. And so I started talking to him about that because he was from California. He had no idea about the South. And he said, well, you should talk to the person who's in charge of the book series for Mercer University Press. And he introduced me 5 minutes later. And so I'm talking to this editor of this series, and I start telling him about how college football is so important in the South, and that seems like it would be a really interesting book about the way in which college football functions religiously in the South. Okay. And it just so turned out that he was from Mississippi. So he knew exactly what I was talking about. And in fact, I'll never forget the words. He said, I've been waiting for somebody to come along and write that book. And so a few years later, I published with Mercer University Press a book called Game Day and God, Football, Faith, and Politics in the American South. So that was sort of an entry into the area of religion and popular culture. And so in that area, some people write in terms of how institutional religion sort of intersects with popular culture. So for example, how Christians maybe are portrayed on South Park, right? Something like that.
Okay.
But my work is really in the way in which certain phenomena in popular culture take on a religious dimension, that they fulfill similar functions of religion, even though they seemingly aren't religious at all. And so college football would be a classic example.
Well, yeah, and so that led to this ESPN documentary.
So I ended up on a ESPN documentary. It was the 150th anniversary of college football, and so they interviewed a lot of people who, coaches, players, and that sort of thing, and then a few scholars like myself who didn't play college football, but have thought a lot about it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the college before we run out of time here. So tell us about the departments in your college for folks who might be curious about what's in the College of Humanities and Social Sciences.
Yeah. We have 5 colleges. So there's or 5 school departments in our college. So one is Communication Studies and Modern Languages. So that covers communications and Spanish in particular. And criminal justice, social work, and sociology is another department. Apparently your daughter is in there.
Social work,
And a third department is English. A fourth department is history and anthropology, and our final department is political science, philosophy, and religion. And so combined, we offer about 26 different majors in our college, 20-something minors, a number of different certificates, 7 graduate degrees. So we cover a pretty broad range of humanities and social sciences.
And you have two regional centers too within your college, right?
We have the Center for Faulkner Studies, which has one of the most impressive collections of Faulkner material in the world. And in fact, you have one of your next guests that can speak to that in particular.
Yes, you can.
And then we have the Bollinger Center for Regional History. And we also have in our college the State University, Southeast Missouri State University Press is in our college.
Yeah, and Law Enforcement Academy too. That's part of your
the Law
responsibility.
Enforcement Academy is the Law Enforcement Academy used to fall in the Department of Criminal Justice, Social Work, and Sociology. It's been moved out into another unit, not an academic unit, but a workforce development unit. But we still have a strong relationship with it. So it's here in town, and folks can go to the Law Enforcement Academy without necessarily being an undergraduate student at SEMO. But our criminal justice students can also do the Law Enforcement Academy for their last semester and get 18 credit hours towards the 120 that they need to graduate. So they're being certified in law enforcement by the state while at the same time getting credit hours to finish their degree.
So July you'll have been here a year. I think you came last July, right? What has surprised you the most about Southeast Missouri and Southeast Missouri State?
Well, this will sound a little corny, but I've been just unbelievably impressed by my colleagues in the college. Especially, you know, the pandemic period that we're coming out of was difficult for everybody.
Right.
And if you read the sort of national press about that focuses on higher education, there's a fair amount of faculty burnout out there, like people in all industries, right? It's been a tough few years for everybody. But our faculty, I am continually amazed by their devotion to the students, their dedication to the craft of teaching. And that was one of the things that appealed to me about this institution too. I've predominantly been at schools where teaching is the primary focus of the faculty members that are there. Research is always a part of keeping ourselves abreast of what's happening in our disciplines. But I think that student-centeredness is key for me. And our faculty just tend to go over and above what's expected of them in order to serve the students. And I think we see that both in the student reaction and in the student success, right? And so I just think a school like Southeast Missouri State University has this unbelievable responsibility and opportunity to work with young people and provide them with the skills and capacities that they need to be successful in whatever they do. And the best surprise, and I shouldn't have been too surprised, but the best surprise is just how dedicated the faculty are.
Before we go, are you working on any more books? Anything in the works?
Well, I just finished this book. So this came out last year. So it's called The Ends of Religion, a history of how the study of religion makes religion irrelevant. And so even though my start in sort of religion and popular culture was in the area of sports, this book really covers popular culture more generally. And it gets to deal, I had an opportunity to deal with some really big questions about secularization, the future of religion, the future, what role popular culture will play in the future of religion. And I told my wife several times that might be the last book because it did have this feeling of sort of a culmination of a couple decades of work. So maybe, but I don't know yet.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Dr. Bain-Selbo, it's very good to talk with you. Thanks
Nice
for being here
talking with
today.
you. Thank you.
Okay, when we come back, we'll be joined by Dr. Brooke Hildebrand-Clubbs and Dr. Robert Hamblin. We're going to talk poetry. You're watching Focus on Southeast, and we will be right back.
Prescription drug pricing points to corporate
Freedom of the press is about your right to know.
and Clark sheer athleticism.
It's about your right to be informed.
Waves for the stock market.
Today, there are real threats to press freedom
reaching residential areas.
and your right to know about the world around us. We must protect our right to know, no matter what kind of news is important to you.
Great question.
Before it's too late, understand the threats. ProtectPressFreedom.org.
Every day,
Millions of people are connecting. Father,
cosplayer,
mentor,
actor. It's time we take a step forward, come together,
and discover
how accepting our differences can make us stronger.
You're not going to get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff. Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the right seat.
What is Southeast Missouri? Let's try this again. You are Southeast Missouri. You make Southeast Missouri what it is. And Southeast Missouri is who we are. It's in our name. It's in our past. And with you, it's our future. Welcome home.
Welcome back to Focus on Southeast, and now the story of how a lunch meeting of two local poets turned into a book where each poet's voice addresses a single or related topic. The book of dialogue poems is called Friend to Friend, and the friends are Dr. Robert Hamblin and Dr. Brooke Hildebrand-Clubbs. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so Brooke, I'll start with you. How did this come about?
Well, Bob and I got to be friends shortly before the pandemic started. And after his wife, Kay, passed away, I tried to make sure I checked in on him. And we had a lot of fun going out for lunch. And he helped me write a book of poems about my hometown because I had never done any self-publishing. And I'd never gotten to take one of his classes when I was at Southeast. So it was my opportunity to finally have famous Ramblin' Hamblin. And so we were eating at Broussard's one day, and I said, what would you think if we tried to write a book together? And that's when he came up with the idea of doing the dialogue poems.
So I know you've been retired now for several years, Bob, but obviously you're still writing and still staying active and putting pen to paper, as it were, right?
Still writing a lot. You know, after Kay's death and then during the pandemic, it was a very lonely time for me. And Brooke and her young daughter, Lily, came to visit us quite often. Kay was an elementary school teacher and taught children in Sunday school, and she loved having Lily visit. And, you know, so writing these poems with Brooke, it helped me fill some empty days during the pandemic, especially. It gave me something to do, and we felt like the exchange that we had. You know, we all learned during the pandemic that we need each other. Yeah. Because a lot of people got lonely during that time, and these poems, in you know, she would write one, I'd respond, I'd write one, she'd respond. There are a couple of poems where we both speak in the poem, and so it was just, it was what I needed at the time, and it was a wonderful experience, and we think it's a pretty good book.
I read it and I enjoyed it. I think it's a very good book as well. Now, there's some Facebook tie-in here. Did you post, or did poems get posted on? Tell me how that worked, Brooke.
Well, that is something that Bob started doing first.
Ah, okay.
He's been very actively self-publishing poems and novels and short stories, and he would post them on Facebook first, and he'd get feedback from all of his various friends. So he would post our poems on Facebook as well, and so there's definitely a social media element. We could thank our Facebook friends. They're part of the friend to friend as well.
Yeah. So I'm going to put you on the spot. I'll start with you, Bob. Do you have a favorite poem from the book? Is there a favorite or a favorite topic from the book?
Well, we wrote a lot about family. Mm-hmm. We wrote some about SEMO, since we both worked here. We dealt with issues also, you know, politics, things that were on the news, and I think we might share, if you wish, Brooke, a poem about her grandmother that I responded to.
Okay.
So I sent this one to Bob. It's called Grandparents. My Grandma Rel has been gone for almost 18 years. At the age of 90, she was the last of my grandparents to pass away. I keep her close by cooking and baking the things she did, singing her songs, first to my children, and now the NICU babies I volunteer to hold. Yet today I said her name and I felt the tears coming. My voice quavered, so I paused and pulled myself together. You will be loved in your life in many ways by a variety of people, but you will never again be loved in that particular way. I guess some days we miss it more than others.
Our name. When we're young, only puppies and grandparents die. Death was all around us even then, but we hardly noticed. I feel like I know your Grandma Rel. I've met her in your poems. I'm now almost as old as she, the last of my generation in my family. I've just returned from the funeral of a beloved nephew. At my age, it's now the younger ones who die. Every book I write now seems the last. Every trip I take, a farewell tour. Your Grandma Rel is blessed. I hope someday someone will say my name.
Very nice. I've read those too. My favorite from your poems was the one about timepiece. You wrote one about a mantle clock and, a cuckoo clock, I think, and yours was about how your iPhone has all the digital records of and the calendars. I thought that was just, I really enjoyed that.
Would you like us to read that one?
Real quickly, yeah, we're going to run out of time and we'll break it.
Oh my gosh.
But that was a good one. Let's do that, and then we have one or two more questions before we
go. Let me find that one. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, it's in, I think it's like 60.
36.
87.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a very, I just thought they were wonderful.
All right,
those.
so you start off this time.
Life. It's like waiting for all the clocks in the house to chime at precisely the same moment. They seldom do, but when they do, it's worth the wait.
Oh, that was the one that we did together. Here, let me look at yours. Sometimes I feel we spend more time imagining how the clocks chime in unison at others' homes, picturing their perfectly behaved cuckoos, instead of appreciating the steady ticking actually occurring in our own messy lives.
So, everybody writes poetry, but nobody reads it. I think that was in your intro, but what's this behind that?
Well, it's true. A lot of people write poetry. It's almost impossible to get it published these days. You know, unless it's fiction and can be made into a movie, there's not much of a market for most writing, and certainly not a lot of market for poetry, unless you're Billy Collins or that young girl that read at the presidential inauguration. So I started posting, since I'm self-published now, I don't have an editor. And I started posting on Facebook to get feedback from readers who would give me suggestions and tell me what they liked and didn't like. And so that's been a very valuable approach for me. The last academic book I did, on Faulkner, by the way, took me 18 months to publish. I self-published in 3 days.
Oh, wow, big difference.
And at my age, I'm not much interested in long-range projects. So, doing this with Brooke was just a great joy.
So we got a little bit of not much time left, but I want to ask this. So I can tell from reading the book that you all had a good time doing this. You enjoyed doing it. Will there be another?
Well, that's the first time we've been asked that.
Yeah, nobody's ever asked us
might
for a
take it as a
sequel.
suggestion, I guess.
Yeah, maybe so.
How did you decide on the topics, too? Did you just, things that were just going on in your lives at the time? Is that?
Yeah, I think it was, well, like there are some in there that are about Election Day. We wrote that on Election Day.
Right.
Sandy Hook, we wrote on the anniversary of the Sandy Hook shooting. So it was just sort of whatever was happening in the news or happening in our lives.
Okay, one final question here. Very personal. Is it hard to share personal things like that and writing it down, or is there some catharsis in putting it on paper and sharing?
I think it's easier to put it on paper than it is to share it personally. I suppose. Yes, it's easier to put it on paper.
Rather than to sit around and talk.
Yeah, I found it very therapeutic writing to Bob. I don't know that I would have told him some of the things I did if I hadn't written it in a poem.
Wow. And we're out of time already, which we have to have you all back again to talk some more, especially when the next book is out. So
okay.
Thank you very much.
Brooke, thank you both for
having us.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Focus on Southeast is a collaboration of KRCU Public Radio and the Department of Mass Media here at Southeast Missouri State University. Just a reminder that portions of these conversations will be broadcast on KRCU Public Radio, including the poems, and will also be available online at krcu.org and on the station's YouTube channel. From the Russ Center for Media, I'm Dan Woods. Thanks for watching. Be sure to tune in next time when we focus on Southeast.